We're now down to our last AUSA Tech in 10, and it is my pleasure to introduce Billy Meadow, the Chief Technology Officer for LocatorX, Inc. Let's have a round of applause for Billy Meadow.
Thank you. My name is Billy Meadow. I'm the founder and Chief Technology Officer. I want to thank the AUSA for having me here today. I also want to thank Major General Jim Miles, who I've gotten to know over the past year and has shared a lot of information with me about the world of the military. I come from a background entirely in the commercial domain. And my experience is really, my background's actually in the world of payments and electronic payments. And I also have been focused in the world of counterfeiting, where we're losing a very large economic war today. And frankly, our adversaries in this war, the economic war related to counterfeits, it's kind of an unusual war in that while we're losing, they're profiting. And so that's something that's got a little bit of passion for me, which I'll get into, which is the bad guys are doing well and we're not. So as a business, what LocatorX is doing is we're tracking assets. And we're doing this by using innovative technology. The company was started when this molecule you see up here is a thing called a buckyball. And it was invented years ago, and a professor at Oxford University figured out how to turn that little buckyball into a resonating molecule that makes a miniature atomic clock. The key thing is an atomic clock can allow you to do location calculations, illustrated like with this building here, where if you have precision timing by putting a buckyball into a tiny little silicon chip, you can have a device that can do the time of flight calculations from reference transmitters, which are the cell towers all across the world. And so with this technology that we license and we're currently productizing, we'll be able to build a chip that you can put into a wide variety of products, from tracking not just GPS on trucks, but actually putting on pallets and cases and individual products. And so we see opportunities not just in the commercial world, being able to track assets where you can know where they are indoors, they can self-locate. We see opportunities to track military assets as well. Our very first customer is actually one of the world's largest consumer packaged goods company, and they're using our technology to find out the who, what, when, where, and how their products use once they ship them. So we use a lot of encryption systems and public-private key and certificate authorities. And our goal really here is to give the tools to commercial manufacturers to help eliminate counterfeiting goods. So if you go to the next slide. We've got a really outstanding board of directors that we put together. Scott Fletcher is our president. He was actually our first outside investor in the company, and he's built a couple of logistics companies and been senior management of two companies that have been built up to over $10 billion in value. And he and I, as well as all the other members on the board, are really on a mission to build the tools to eliminate counterfeiting and things that infect the commercial supply chain, which is based on different vulnerabilities that the nefarious operators out there are exploiting. I'm super excited. As you can see, we've got the former Secretary of the Air Force, Deborah Lee James, has actually joined our board just most recently. My background is in payments. I built up a company called PaySpan. We integrated into legacy systems, doing a lot of transaction processing for about 100 Fortune 500 clients. And in this progress of trying to figure out how to get an atomic clock built where we put it into a tiny chip, I met Dr. Michael Cabase, who spent about 10 years in the director of the microelectronics at Fort Meade. He and I are working on some patents where we can really improve the integrity of silicon manufacturing by putting security keys on top of a wafer with a 3D nanoprint process. And the goal is to create a type where you can have a wafer that can be sourced anywhere in the world, and you do a final packaging phase where you put the private keys and the security keys on each and every chip, then do the slice and dice and packaging to get it into printed circuit boards and so on. So obviously that's to eliminate risks that other rogue operators have used to do chemical etching and x-rays to derive keys out of chips, which create risk on things like IFF gear. And more importantly, it's a tool that prevents counterfeiting and loss. So if you go to the next slide, I want to talk to you about the magnitude of counterfeiting. It's actually surprisingly large, and I can tell you when I go into details of all the things that are counterfeited, people are astonished, and I can't share some of the things I know about some of the companies I've learned, but fundamentally, it's as simple as counterfeiting Windex, where someone can make a fake label, looks just as good. And so it's in virtually any product that has good margin to it or a good brand name behind it, there is counterfeiting going on. And there's really no tools for the people who have to inspect products to do this. And there's particular vulnerabilities on counterfeit when it relates to microelectronics, especially. I could see that in the world of the military. It's absolutely very high risk in the commercial world. And so there's fundamentally no tool for consumers or anyone practically to determine is it real or fake. And I keep talking about counterfeiting as a war. It's an economic war, but it actually has life and death consequences. And you know, the sad truth is there's horrible situations where, for example, when melamine is mixed in with baby's milk formula, damaging thousands of kidneys and unknown number of deaths of babies. And also in the world of pharmaceuticals, where there's been some efforts to improve, but it's still horrible in the third world, there's a lot of fake drugs that literally every single day a plane load of people are dying. And the scary part is they don't even know, is it one plane load, two plane loads, three plane loads per day of people dying due to fake meds, but that is reality. And we're actually losing this war, but you know what? Our country and the resources we have is a country that can turn it around. And so we're focused at LocatorX to help solve that. So we're using converging technologies. If you go to the next slide. We're leveraging these different converging technologies to help create the solutions that are easy to adopt by consumer product goods manufacturers. And these type of technologies are nothing more complicated than just doing a 2D barcode, high-speed printing. So every label of Windex actually has a unique label on it. So if someone wanted to scan it with their phone camera, they could see it comes from the manufacturer and not from some counterfeit. And so there's also additional things that are occurring with the cost of chips going into labels. On this illustration I've got here, this is from a piece of equipment called a Moldbauer machine that takes film stock. As you can see on the bottom right there, those are just RFID type labels. They can be, you can put a Bluetooth chip in there, you can put an NFC, you can put an RFID, but you're looking at the antenna going in, and above it is a wafer where they're doing direct insertion. So this equipment is now starting to propagate out through the world, where the cost of putting chips into labels to tagging assets is dropping dramatically. And so that's really changing the economics of what it takes to have a product where someone could scan it with their phone and gather a huge amount of information from it. And by putting security keys into this, you can create a very robust security package for something as simple as a Windex product. Now, obviously, we're starting out with doing pallets and cases and high-value goods, but the fundamental economics are changing quite rapidly. And so we're at LocatorX, we're looking to help accelerate the ability for large companies to be able to connect with their customers by putting in a good security platform. And that will eliminate a lot of supply chain risks in the commercial domain. If we do our jobs well, you know, we think there might be opportunities to do that for military equipment where you can scan it and gather information. So I'll show you, obviously when you put chips in there, we intend to put a lot of other capabilities into it with motion detection, environmental sensors, and all of that. And it really relates to the cost of the silicon, which is nil. The value of the data that you can capture about that individual product is actually far larger than the cost of the product itself. So if you could flip to the next slide for me. I'll cover with you briefly what we're doing as a company. We have a three-phase deployment. Our first one is doing these 2D barcodes, which are unique and they're protected by a certificate authority. And so we can have assurance to the supply chain. So those barcodes can go on the packaging of the product itself, on the outer shipping box everywhere, so that different organizations just using their smartphone, including customs, postal service, anyone shipping on the planet, would be able to scan something and know its origin. So we see opportunities to serialize and track all products and create a log that can be stored as a blockchain up in the cloud on that particular asset. And then when we add a chip to it, we can then take that chip and then store it locally, and then at the same time store it on the cloud. But it opens up the opportunity for people to have their PCs connect to them, and it also opens up some risk areas for people. So on the second phase, we're simply adding chips to labels and putting them in so you can track them and know inventory. And with Bluetooth Low Energy, someone could walk in and scan an entire pantry, a storeroom, a tent, anything to get instant information from these devices. So obviously we're intending to add our atomic clock to all of this so that that device would know where it is. So when it's shipped from point A to point B, it would know from its geofence, did I ever make it to point B? If I'm not there, I need to transmit and tell someone. So it should improve a lot of things with logistics. And finally, to wrap up, if you could go to the final slide, what we're looking to do is we see that the Internet of Things is actually going to be everything. There's 1.5 trillion products produced every year that have labels on them that are 1D barcodes, and we see the opportunity to go to 2D and take out a lot of counterfeiting problems and really improve, sort of protect the brands of large commercial entities. But at the same time, all of this technology can provide a very low-cost mechanism to provide more assurance to military assets. And we're looking to learn from everybody here. This is our first time at a military conference, and we're trying to protect America on the economic war, and we'd be happy to help protect and take our technology and apply it to the military needs. So love to have you come by and visit us. We've got a little room over off the North Hall, Section 3. Be happy to talk to anybody. So thank you for your time.
Thank you so much, Mr. Meadow. I will tell you that that presentation alone was worth the price of admission to this. And I will tell you, as a former director of Land and Maritime for DLA, and I don't know if the Admiral is still with us, I certainly could have used that technology. Well, we're still trying to work with the challenges of counterfeit microelectronics, as you say, but the implications for the entire supply chain really makes you think. Thank you so much for that wonderful presentation.